This is G-Free Radio. Here's your host, Peter Stewart.
And it's episode 66 of the G-Free Radio Show. All change for... Well, last week we heard about changes to the gluten-free labelling regulations in the United States. This week we hear about changes to the regulations in the United Kingdom and Europe. If you eat food out, you'll find this of great interest. If you sell food from any kind of location, anywhere in Europe, you seriously need to listen to the rest of this episode. As they say, you don't know what you don't know, and not adhering to these changes could land you in deep trouble legally. The changes come into effect in just a handful of weeks. Plus, from one of our trade show trips, we hear from the American company that's making inroads into the markets in other countries. Yeah, Bob's Red Mill. We'll hear from them a little bit later on. And of course, we always encourage you to follow us on Twitter. We're at G-Free Radio. And also to like us, to follow us, to support us, to favourite us. Wherever you're listening to this right now, there's probably a button that you can click, which means that you give us an extra little bit of support, and it also means that you get notified whenever we upload another episode of the G-Free Radio Show. Listen often, tell your friends, and don't forget to go back and listen to those archive episodes as well. We'd really appreciate your support here at G-Free Radio. First this week, what do you know about the changes in the EU food information regulations? If you ever eat food away from home, so that'll be all of us, or intend to travel across Europe, or out of Europe, or into Europe, and I reckon that's probably 99.9% of people listening to this right now, it'll be really useful for you to know about those changes in the law. If you serve food in any form, anywhere in Europe, it's imperative that you know about the changes in the law. By December 2014, the food service industry right across Europe will have to be compliant to the new regulations in regard to listing all food ingredients, highlighting EU-listed allergens for their entire menus, including drinks. Well, the Food Allergy Training Consultancy can help you with getting your company and staff up to speed. And for those of us who eat rather than serve, it's going to be really good to know what goes on behind the scenes, especially because our rights are about to change as well. So, from the Food Allergy Training Consultancy, hello, Caroline Benjamin. Thanks for joining us, Caroline.
Thank you for having me.
So, remind us what is going to happen at the end of the year here in the UK.
Okay, on the 13th of December, the transition period for the regulation, the EU Food Information for Consumer Regulation 1169/2011 will come to an end. And on that day, anybody within the food operation business who supplies food to the end consumer will need to provide allergen information, specifically the 14 allergens within the regulation, to the end consumer on request, but always have it available so that it's there in the background to be able to supply to the customer.
Okay, so what does that mean practically? Let's give you a scenario then, Caroline. If I go to chain restaurants are probably up to speed. So let's choose a family-run restaurant in the high street. Okay, and I go in and I say, this steak and chips here, is that gluten-free? What should they be saying and what should I be saying back?
Okay, they should be able to supply you information orally in a conversation if they wish to, or they can provide you with a chart with information on there. The information that they provide needs to be consistent and verifiable. So if they provide it orally, they need to have backup information. What they need to take into consideration is cross-contamination and due diligence. Just for example, today, I've been out and about in Hampshire trying to promote some workshops we're doing. Been around to several restaurants and coffee shops, and I spoke to a lady and she did beef burgers and fries, etc. And she informed me the beef burgers weren't gluten-free, but the chips were, the fries were. So I had a bit of a conversation with her, so I'm asking, are the fries cooked with anything else? Yeah, they're cooked with the fish fingers. And I had to explain to her that actually that was cross-contamination, and for somebody who has celiac disease, that could be, quite critical. So there's not a lot of understanding out there on cross-contact in some establishments. So it's important that when these people put information together, not only do they talk about the allergens that are contained within the product deliberately, but the unintentional allergens, they need to be aware when there's a problem and when there's not a problem.
Okay, now there's several questions arise from what you just said there. First of all, that it's not just verbal, they have to be able to back it up with some written evidence if that is requested, yeah?
Absolutely. Yes,
So, because obviously I'm worried that, a 17, 18-year-old, forgive me for being a little ageist, who's perhaps just working at the restaurant, maybe on a Saturday night or a Saturday lunchtime to earn a bit of extra pocket money, isn't necessarily going to know what to say or how to phrase it. But you can say, okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Natalie, Hannah, Sam, Jack. Have you got that written down for me? And that is expected, and there should be something.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone then that checks what is written down? I mean, once they've written it, does that have to be checked or verified or certified by local council or trading standards or food standards or anything?
Well, they should be checking on a regular basis. I mean, there's all different types of businesses, and obviously, there's different tools out there that people can use. So if they're going to do it manually, if they're a small coffee shop and they know exactly what's in their products and making it from fresh, they could probably have a manual process in place. But they will need to check it on a regular basis, and they need to provide the due diligence that they are checking on a regular basis. So if they buy in sources, they need to check the ingredients. We've developed a manual tool, a spreadsheet, which we're sort of using to help smaller businesses like coffee shops. But it's not going to be ideal for those businesses which are larger, because it's not going to enable them to follow through on all the ingredients. There are some tools out there. There's a lot of IT tools that are out there where people have been using them probably for years, which involve the ordering and creation of menus and ingredients and nutrition. And a lot of those tools are adding the allergen side to it as well. And they're able to highlight the allergens that are in there. And those tools also are talking to some of the larger companies like 3663 and Break Brothers, have a link into those software companies, and their ingredients are being automatically updated. It's going to be a very big challenge for caterers, because obviously it's more work. But, they should know what's in their products. They should know what they're buying, and they should be aware of, what the end consumer can and cannot eat.
Okay.
So, it's going to be a challenge, but we have to work our way through it.
And there are inevitably going to be problems, aren't there? There will be some cock-ups. There will be some people who are going who are becoming rather unwell, and there will be some complaints to local authorities. What can we do if, after having our steak and chips at the ABC Cafe, we go back home and then we are rather unwell? What can we do? Is that classed as food poisoning or not?
It's probably more a case of food not served as described on the menu, and then very similar to, in some ways, the Jamie Oliver's type of situation. But it's more of a labelling thing. If you've ordered something that's been labelled as gluten-free and has had gluten in it, then obviously, it's not as described. So you need to contact either your local environmental health officer or trading standards and talk to them. I mean, one of the things that, obviously we're trying to educate businesses, and we're trying to make them on our side, because, at the end of the day, we don't want to alienate them. We don't want them to say, we're going to not provide anything that's suitable, so then, exclude you. So we're going to name all the allergens. We're going to do dishes with all the allergens in them, in that sense. So we want to try and get them on our side as well. So we want to try and, with the customer, you need to have a conversation with them. You need to, still talk to them, still challenge them, and ask them what's in their dishes. And, when I'm doing my training and I sort of talk to people, I say we ask more questions because we want to be reassured. We want to hear the right answers. If we hear just one little wrong answer and then it starts going downhill, then we're like, actually, we don't want to eat here. We're not sure what we're going into. So it's very difficult. But the main part of the legislation as well is that businesses aren't allowed to say that the food contains all the allergens when they don't, and they're also not allowed to say they don't know. So, an important thing is if you have a member of staff within your catering business and they don't know, they say, hands up, I don't know, but let me go and get a member of staff that does know. So you should always say, they should always have a guru, an allergen guru, perhaps in the venue or the restaurant or the business, who can be called upon. Team leaders, supervisors, managers, they should be trained and be aware of that information.
Okay, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, because that could be a kind of get out clause, couldn't it? If we're talking about the steak and chips, and you have a peppercorn sauce, and you say, and has this peppercorn sauce got gluten in it? And they think to themselves, well, I'm going to look a bit of a numpty, a bit of a muppet if I say I don't know, so I'll just say yes, because then it means that I'm off the hook, they won't have it, and everyone's sweet. So they can't say that, or they shouldn't say that.
But the other thing to be aware of is that precautionary labelling is not covered under the legislation. So if, for instance, there's unintentional allergens in there because of cross-contamination, it's not covered. However, the FSA, there's a paragraph in the FSA information and some guidance, and it says precautionary allergen labelling should only be used following a thorough risk assessment when you think there's a real risk of allergen cross-contamination that cannot be eliminated. So what we're doing is I'm working with people, like I said, we have like a matrix. So we're sort of like listing the allergens on one side, and we're doing like a traffic light system of green, amber and red. So trying to identify the allergens that are in there. And in the right-hand column, if it's amber, say for instance you have a burger with coleslaw, but once you remove the coleslaw from the meal, it's egg-free. So you put in the right-hand column eggs, remove coleslaw, and it's safe. But then on the far right, you can think about cross-contamination as well. So trying to sort of get people to put that in place, to do the policies and the procedures, to try and build that up as well.
Okay, all right. My guest in this week's episode of the G3 Radio Show is Caroline Benjamin from the Food Allergy Aware Training Consultancy, speaking an awful lot of sense and really being a bit of an eye-opener, as well as hopefully an ear-opener as well for you this week. And we'll speak with Caroline a little bit more in a few seconds' time, or a few minutes' time, and also give you details of how you can get in touch with her so you can tap into a lot of her expertise, because time is moving on. Now I'm at a stall which is really, really well known in the United States and becoming more well known over here, Bob's Red Mill. And yes, there is a Bob. And Mairead is with me from Bob's Red Mill. Well, you're one of the distributors, aren't you, of Bob's Red Mill products here in the UK?
Yes, we're their European agent, and we bring all their product into the UK, and we service Europe from the UK. Okay,
so what is in the range of Bob's Red Mill?
Bob's are famous for being natural food and whole grain specialists. They have, as part of their whole business, they have a dedicated gluten-free facility where they produce over 70 gluten-free lines. They're very famous in the States for being suppliers of stone ground flours, including gluten-free flours.
Now you say stone ground, so why is that important? Why is that different?
Stone ground is very important because due to the nature of the old stone grinding, it's a much slower process, and therefore all the nutrients are completely preserved, whereas in a lot of the faster, more modern machines, with the speed and the heat that's generated, it destroys a lot of the nutritional value. So by staying faithful to the traditional old stone ground methods, they're preserving the nutrients. And Bob would always say 100 pounds in, like 100 pounds grain in and 100 pounds out, 100 pounds flour.
So nothing is lost, it is just ground down, that is it?
Nothing is lost.
Yeah.
So they specialise in these flours, baking mixes, and also cereals. We have the only gluten-free oat that has a great taste medal.
Okay, and what I noticed specifically from looking at all of these, and I'm noticing on things like the chocolate mix and also what's up here, the pinhead oats and so on, the packaging, you can see through, you can actually see what you're getting.
Bob's has been adamant from the very beginning, Bob himself, that he wanted to have see-through packaging because he wanted people to be able to see the quality and to see the quality of what they were eating, the quality of what was going in the bags. Even the actual bags itself, the plastic he uses is such a good quality one. It's the same
that's not going to split, is it, on the way home from the supermarket
not,
or whatever? No.
And it's a part of the whole philosophy of his company. He always wanted to have an open company. He was very open with his employees. He has a very passionate feeling for his employees, and he was so passionate about them that 2 years ago he actually gave the company to his employees, and it is now an employee-owned company. He was concerned that if he sold it to one of the big, companies like Kellogg's or somebody like that they would just maybe close the factory down and make the employees redundant. And he said nobody deserved to own the factory except the people that built the business up with him, and that in conscience there was no other decision he could make but to give the company to the employees. His partners agreed with him, and on his 82nd birthday 2 years ago, he called in all the employees and let them know that they had now become
fantastic.
owners.
Now, if that isn't worth buying a cake mix for, that story alone. I don't know what is.
And
Now,
his big thing is that about the quality of his ingredients, he says it's life insurance that you eat. And I really think that line captures so much.
so you've got to look after yourself. You've got to feed yourself some really good food. That's really what he's saying there,
Exactly.
isn't it? Yeah.
I guess what you put
Look
in, you
after
get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the oats. And tell me about quinoa, because we hear a lot about that, but what do we actually do with quinoa? It's one of those words I have to always think twice before I say it when I read it, so I don't mispronounce it. But what is it about quinoa that you can... How do you cook it? What do you do with it?
It's much more nutritious than rice. It's very high in fibre. It's a good source of iron, and it has all 8 essential amino acids. So it was a primary staple of the ancient Incas of South America. It's got a delicate, nutty flavour. It's very easy to prepare. It's widely versatile. It's great by itself or any recipe that calls for whole grains.
So instead of having rice as a side dish or something on top of rice, have quinoa instead?
Yes, yeah. Or you can use it to make a lovely salad.
I walked past earlier and I saw Rosie, I think it was, on your stand stirring something in this big pot here, and I couldn't get very close, so I don't know what it was, and I can still see it's there, although no stirring is going on. I guess you've run out. What is in that pot?
We have a product that when everybody tasted it, they described it as, wow, this is so comforting. It's a non-instant hot cereal. So you cook it up like an oat porridge,
right.
But a lot of people can't even tolerate gluten-free oats, so this is a very good option for them. And some people want something hot, but they want an alternative to oat porridge. You know, maybe they have oat porridge 6 days a week and they want something else on the 7th day. So this is actually 4 different whole grains.
Wow.
So it's whole grain brown rice, millet, sorghum and buckwheat. So it's got a very good fibre content as well. And it's beautiful with some honey or some agave. Throw in some raspberries. And
so it has a kind of porridge-like consistency, or an oat porridge-like consistency,
well,
but
it's more kind of like a semolina polenta constituency. Maybe a little bit, sometimes they think a little bit like a baby food consistency, and then maybe that's why people say it's so comforting.
Perhaps it is. And where can people get Bob's Red Mill items from?
Quite a bit of it available on Amazon. It's also available through Ocado, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, gluten-free foodmarket.co.uk. That has a very extensive selection. You can also find Bob's in independent health food stores. So even just go, if you can't see Bob's, just go to your local independent health food store and ask them to get it from any of the main health food wholesalers. You should have no problem getting Bob's then. And we're extending the line all the time. We have to change the packaging when it comes into Europe. So it's a slow process, but it's a gradual process, and we do have all of their best gluten-free lines.
And you're saying you change the packaging because that's the different rules and regulations about labelling and what things are called and how you lay out those nutritional boxes.
Yes, exactly. And also we have a wonderful new product we're launching. It's a self-raising. It's a self-raising flour, but in the US it's called a biscuit and baking mix. And we think that means cookie, but they actually mean it more like a self-raising flour scone, so we had to change the name of it. And obviously the nutritional panel is different, so we change all of that as well.
G-Free Radio, and Caroline Benjamin is my guest in this part of this week's programme, and we're talking about those new rules which are coming into effect in the UK at the end of the year. And Caroline earlier on was telling us all about the different compliance issues and what people will have to do and what you can say and what you should expect from a restaurant or a cafe or something like that when you go in. And okay, we've had the cafe restaurant scenario. I guess the other main one would perhaps be if I'm making cakes at home and then selling them maybe on a farmer's market or something like that, or a high street Saturday morning market, and labelling them up as gluten-free. Is that still going to be allowed or not?
Yeah, they need to make sure that there is labelling. If it's pre-packed food, the labelling obviously is being updated, so the contains boxes are now going to be removed. So you'll see one lot of ingredients listed, and the allergens within that box will be highlighted. So, for instance, if there's wheat flour in there, the word wheat could be highlighted. If there was cream in it, there could be brackets milk and highlighted. So it will need to make sure that the labelling is quite adequate and quite secure. The may contain labelling can still be in place because obviously if they've done a risk assessment for cross-contamination. Obviously, if they're claiming something is gluten-free, then they need to think about the 20 parts per million. If not, perhaps they should be using the non-gluten containing ingredients. So it's something they need to talk about, perhaps with their own trading standards in that sort of situation.
Okay, now I'm under the impression that if I'm just a small-scale caterer, then I'm not going to be having those labels on at all about what the ingredients is, am I? Or, you know, if I'm perhaps just selling, what about, let's move it down a scale from a farmer's market or a high street market to a school cake sale or a church fete? Okay,
there is an exemption. But the law or the regulation states that anybody who supplies food or drink on a regular basis is covered by the legislation. So those people that supply cricket teas maybe on a regular basis, that's included in the legislation. My local school has a coffee shop which is run by volunteers once a week. That's covered by the legislation. So they will need to provide information on all the products that they're selling. There is an exemption. So if you run a one-off cake sale, say for instance you're doing a charity event in a school, and you're running a one-off cake sale, they are exempt from it. So anybody who provides food on a regular basis will be covered. Even if you're giving it away for free, it's still covered. It's also transport that's leaving the EU. So any transport, ferries, trains, buses, boats, etc., leaving the EU countries are covered by the legislation.
I'm stunned. Are you stunned about how thorough these new regulations are? Or have you come across a few little loopholes and you're thinking, you know what, you've missed out a bit there, or you know what, that's not going to work?
Well, it's very difficult. I get lots of different reactions from different people. Like I said, I was out and about today in Hampshire. The first venue that I walked into, and I sort of said, are you aware of it? And they were. And this lady basically said, you know, I might as well just shut down. Most of the other ones I went to, they were all quite positive. But the thing that I'm finding the most is that a lot of venues do not even know the legislation exists. It's just
really?
Not being publicised.
What kind of percentage then of places you go to?
I'd probably say about 85%
No.
in some ways of people that I'm talking to. And I sort of, you know, even within large chains, although the people at the top of the chain are still aware about it, yeah, there's probably an email gone out to one or two people, but there's some businesses are not completely aware of it, and it's quite a struggle to do that. I was in Brighton, Arundel and Chichester last month, and I must have visited about 200 venues, and I'd say probably 85-90% of them did not have any information on it and weren't aware of it. And, you know, it's quite scary because, you know, the funding's not there to push it through. So for us allergen sufferers, I think, you know, quite a lot of us are aware of it. You know, we're going to be going into restaurants expecting the information, but some of these businesses aren't aware. So, you know, it is quite frightening.
Absolutely. I am stunned. Okay, well, you use the word frightening. What about the people who are aware and come along to your courses, to your seminars, to your training days and so on, which I know you're doing in association with some county councils and trading standards and food professionals and so on. What are the kinds of things they're saying to you? Are there some scare stories that you can impart, and how have you been able to reassure them?
I think really most of them are sort of like there's about 50-50%. Some are really like engaging and really, really positive. You get other people that are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Just more legislation. I think if most businesses are aware of what they're serving their customers anyway, they should be aware of what their suppliers are giving to them. They should be aware of what food's in their products. So it's part of HACCP really. It's just an addition to HACCP, and you know, they're taking the next step forward and including allergens on there. I think, you know, they are aware that they need to have work done. They are aware that they are going to have to sort of, you know, step up a little bit. But it's still relatively new within what they're doing. You know, the workshops that we're running at the moment are not actually telling them what to do, because obviously single business is different and everyone decides that they want to handle it in a different way. You know, it's just trying to get them on the road to think about what they need to do, and then perhaps go the next step forward to think, actually, how's your business going to manage this?
As a celiac or someone with celiac disease, I'm beginning to feel a little nervous, but also a little sorry for these food outlets. I mean, you know, we're only coming out the back end of a recession. There are all sorts of red tape and maternity leave and giving people time off for various reasons. Paternity leave, perhaps it happens to be, you know, you're a small business, you're struggling, you've got 3 or 4 people, And then there's some more red tape, more legislation, more training you've got to do, more paperwork you've got to do. You've got to keep things updated and signed off and double-checked and so on. Otherwise, there could be a threat of your business going down, bad publicity. Social media comes into play. Don't go to the ABC cafe because, they poisoned me or whatever it happens to be. I'm actually feeling a bit sorry for these guys, even though I know the legislation is there to protect and help me.
Yeah, and I think, it's going to be sort of really challenging for them, and they are having quite a tough time out there. The big guys are okay because they've got the money behind them, they've got the support and the structure. But even the big guys, to be fair, I've been into some chains of restaurants, and they say, we do lots of allergen training, we have this and we have that, and I've had bad experiences, as you probably have yourself, They say that we're on board with all the allergens and we can get the information, but sometimes they struggle with it on the ground. So it's not just the small businesses. I think that the big businesses are going to be struggling as well, because people are going to be, we're quite vocal, aren't we, within the celiac or the food allergy area, social media. And, if people are going to get, vocal, I just hope that no one abuses it. That's the thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's been put there for a purpose to help us decide to eat somewhere safely. And all I would say is, just give these guys time, go in there and make them aware of the legislation. Don't expect them to automatically know when you go in on the 13th of December. Don't expect, everything to change overnight, but try and have that conversation with them and say, are you aware of the legislation? Because you should be providing us with this information. Don't jump on them, because, to be fair, it hasn't been published that well. I went to a couple of seminars, and the guy who does the labelling for DEFRA, his take was that these businesses need to find out what regulations affect them. It's not up to DEFRA or Environmental Health Officer to tell them what regulations affect their business.
And you know what? It comes at a very difficult time, doesn't it? What, a fortnight before Christmas? It's not the best time, is it, for heaven's sake?
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, someone could be putting together a Christmas menu quite happily and then realise that they've suddenly got to rework it or lay it out or publicise it in a different way.
Absolutely, and I had a conversation with somebody that was at my workshop this week, and they said that their Christmas menu was done 2 months ago. So, they've got to start looking at how they're going to do that.
Okay. And how are the seminars going?
Yeah, we're starting to get there slowly. I think because obviously it's now going to summer holidays, so there are people that are sort of thinking, Christmas is a long way off, December's quite a long way away. But we're starting to build on there. I'm hoping, I'm working with a supplier, and we may be doing a sort of series of workshops possibly in the autumn, so that's looking good. Hopefully if we can do that, it can reduce the cost, and then we'll bring the people in on that as well. A lot easier, because I think it's the cost problem that a lot of these businesses have. They can't afford to spend hundreds and thousands of pounds on this type of thing.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll come to your contact details in a few seconds' time. Just one more question. So, let's look forward to summer 2015, when hopefully things have settled down here. I've got a question for you. If I go to Paris, if I go to Stockholm or Berlin or Rome, in other words, other places in Europe, in continental Europe, are they going to have the same legislation?
They should be. If they're part of the EU, then they are, going to have to be compliant by the legislation. But obviously, it's like everything, isn't it? How does it get managed food safety-wise when you go abroad and you see food that's uncovered, etc.? It's very difficult, but they should be compliant. It's the law over there. It's an EU regulation.
Okay, well, Caroline, we'll catch up with you then, perhaps nearer the time when this new legislation comes in, for a bit of a catch up to find out how it's going, and then maybe early in 2015 as well to find out how it's gone and how people are coping. It sounds as though it's kind of on a bit of a knife edge about whether or not it's going to be taken up with in time, frankly, and properly. Caroline, if people have heard this. Maybe they're running a cafe or a bar or a restaurant or doing cake sales and so on a regular basis. Maybe they know someone else that would benefit from your experience and expertise. How can they get in contact with you?
They can go via our website, which is fatc.co.uk. So that's Foxtrot Alpha Tango Charlie.co.uk. If you want to have a look at our workshops, if you go /events, and we can have our workshops on there. We're hoping, like I said, to have some more going in the autumn, so you'll see some more dates go out. All my phone number's on the contact page, so you can give us a call, and we offer a 15-minute free consultation where we can sort of just have a chat and see where you are at and if we can help you at all.
Okay, Caroline, thanks very much for your expertise, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, you're gluten-free and you might have celiac disease, or maybe you're gluten-free and you're dairy-free as well, or gluten-free and egg-free. But what if you're gluten-free and dairy-free and egg-free and corn-free? We'll hear from the woman who started a campaign for more GF brands to also exclude corn, egg and dairy from their products for those people with celiac disease who have additional allergies. And Crate of Nothing is the brainchild of Craig Wallace, who after chatting with a few friends with celiac disease realised just how dismal a choice of gluten-free grub there can be on supermarket shelves, not to mention the dire straits of some restaurant menus. So, being a big foodie himself, he decided to try and fill the void by creating Crate of Nothing, a 100% gluten and dairy-free box of goodies posted direct to your home or office or maybe to a friend. By seeking out small suppliers or items which may not be generally available, Crate of Nothing offers a much wider range of ingredients, snacks and lovely nibbles for you to enjoy. We'll hear more about the business in next week's episode of the G-Free Radio Show. Don't forget to follow us, like us, love us even. Wherever you're listening to us now, there'll be a button which says that you love us or like us or favourite us and want to support us and know more about us. Do please click that button and rate us and tell your friends, anyone else in the support group that you go to, about the G-Free Radio Show. I'm Peter Stewart. I'll be back next week.